to JForrest English Training. I'm Jennifer, and today you're going to learn English through stories. We're going to review 4 different news articles, and through this review, you're going to learn a lot of advanced vocabulary, advanced grammar, and even correct pronunciation. Let's get started.
Let me read the headline. Canada's population surpasses 40 million. Surpasses, this means more than. Another word is exceed. So right now, Canada has more than 40 million people. Exceed is another way of saying it. So in this case, because it is in the present simple, exceeds, surpasses, I'll put exceeds with an S. What's the population of your country? Most likely it's more than 40 million because Canada has a very small population. So share what your country is and its population in the comments. They will be really interesting. Now, I'm Canadian, if you didn't know. And interestingly, I had no idea that Canada's population surpassed 40 million. A student shared the news with me, so thank you to that student. And now I'm reviewing the article with everyone. Let's continue on. Statistics Canada has a population clock. So this here looks like it is the population clock, which estimates Canada's population in real time based on a number of factors. So in real time, that means as it's happening. So on Saturday at 2:34 p.m., it will have the data for Canada's population. And this number is always increasing, or even potentially it could decrease as well. A population can go down. So that means in real time as it's happening. As it's happening. Based on a number of factors, and then they list the factors like recent trends for births. That's one factor. Deaths and migration data. Let's talk about migration. I have a lot of students who ask, and native speakers who ask, what's the difference between migration and immigration? So first, let's talk about immigration, the term you're probably more familiar with. Immigration is the concept of permanently moving to a foreign country. Now, migration simply means moving. So the difference really is the fact that immigration sounds more permanent, where migration, it could be someone coming to Canada to study, and they're only going to stay for their education, and then they plan to go back, or they're only in Canada temporarily, and then they plan to go back. So there's less of an emphasis on permanency. So that's the main difference here. Migration data. So it's saying that this total, it represents people who are in the country even on a temporary reason. For example, studying for a 1-year diploma, they're still counted in this total. The clock hit 40 million just before 3 p.m. on Friday, June 16th. Let's talk about the verb hit. This is one of those verbs that is widely used in English and has many different meanings, depend on how it's used. Of course, there's the more literal definition of hit, which is this, hit. In this context, that's not what it means. When you hit something, in this case, it means you reach a target. And 40 million is the target. So hit simply means reach, but when you use it, oh, we hit 40 million, it sounds like more of an accomplishment, whereas reach doesn't have that sense of accomplishment. So for example, in a company, they might say, we hit our sales goal for this year and it's only July. So it's only halfway through the year, but they hit their sales goal. They reached it. They achieved it. So that's how you can use hit as well. And remember that hit in the past form is still hit. Yesterday, we hit our sales goal. I created a free lesson PDF that summarizes everything from this lesson, so you can look in the description for the link to download that. Let's continue. This is an exciting milestone for Canada. A milestone is an important accomplishment for a person, a company, a country, a group. An important accomplishment. So for you, you might say graduating from university was a major milestone in my life, or having a child, getting married, buying my first house, finding my first job. Notice how I started all of those examples in the gerund. Finding my first job. So finding my first job, or the love of my life, was, because the action has already been completed, was a major, you don't have to say major, you could just say milestone, was a major milestone in my life. This is a great sentence for you to practice, so why don't you do that right now? What was a major milestone in your life? Share that in the comments and put your verb in the ing in the gerund form. So put that in the comments to practice that, and I'm excited to find out what your major milestone was. It is a strong signal that Canada remains a dynamic and welcoming country. Dynamic is a great adjective to add to your vocabulary, and it means having a lot of ideas and enthusiasm. So Canada remains a dynamic country. So notice we're using dynamic as an adjective to describe what type of country Canada is. So you could use this for your company, your school, your organization. I work in a dynamic company, for example. Full of potential, said Chief Statistician Anil Arora in a media statement. Let's take a look at this. Could be a difficult word to pronounce. Statistician. So notice how I connect this. Statistician. 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 Try it. Statistician. Okay, you can practice that. Chief statistician. So a statistician is someone who analyzes statistics. And by saying chief, it means they are the main statistician, the most important, the highest rank, the highest ranking statistician. So I'll put that highest rank. Canada's population growth rate currently stands at 2.7%. So the growth rate means every year Canada's population increases by 2.7%, which is the highest annual growth rate since 1957, when Canada was experiencing its post-war baby boom. Now you may be familiar with the term baby boomers. Baby boomers. This describes a generation, and it's the generation that was born right after the war. And that generation is my parents' generation. So generally people in their 60s and 70s, I believe, would be considered baby boomers. And I'm not sure if this is happening in your country, but in Canada right now, all the baby boomers are retiring. This massive amount of people are exiting the workforce right now. So it's a very interesting time in the economy. Baby boomers. Is that a term that you're familiar with in your country? Is there a large population that resulted after the war? Share that in the comments as well. I'd be interested to know. Canada's population reached 30 million in 1997 and could reach 50 million as early as 2043 if the current trend continues. Canada's population reached 30 million. Now remember, we could say hit 30 million because generally numbers that end in 0 or 5 are considered the major accomplishments, the milestones. So we could use our other verb we learned, hit. And remember, this is the past form as well. So although we have reached with an ED, it's just hit. Canada's population reached 30 million, which was an important milestone in 1997 and could reach 50 million as early as 2043. Now notice here they used the modal could reach. First of all, remember that after a modal verb, you only use the base form. So modal plus base. So no to reach, could to reach. No, modal plus base always. And this is because it's a potential. The possibility exists, but that doesn't mean it actually will happen. So the potential is there, but it's not guaranteeing anything. Potential. So this is, if you understand how this is used, we use this a lot to say something like, I could help you. I could help you move this weekend. So I'm saying the potential is there. My schedule is open. I'm available, but I'm not going to. Now, this isn't a very nice thing to say to someone, but we use this as a little bit of a joke. Oh, I could help you, but I'm not going to. Just kidding. Of course, I'll help you move this weekend. So that's a fun way. If you know how to properly use could, you can make a little joke like this. You probably don't want to say that to your boss, though. I'll leave that to your discretion. As early as, they're saying 2043 is the earliest time that this could happen, but it could also happen later. So they're using as early as just to state the earliest time, not that other times aren't possible. For example, if you're planning a wedding, a party, or even a conference, you could say, guests will arrive as early as 3:00 p.m. So this doesn't mean that every guest will arrive at 3. This is just the earliest time they'll arrive. Of course, it's possible for them to arrive at 3:30, 4:00, even 5:00 if they're extremely late. But this is the earliest time, as early as. So for deadlines, you can use this. You might say, I can get you the report as early as 9 a.m. Or you could put Saturday. Why would you submit a report on Saturday? Tuesday. Now you're letting your boss know or your coworker know this is the earliest time, but it may be later than that. Okay, let's continue on. Last year, Canada's population increased by a record of 1.05 million people. You could put 1.05, 1.05. Both of those for pronouncing it are fine. 1.05 million people. And I haven't mentioned this, but remember that we don't put an S on million. I hear students say this a lot. Oh, there are 1 millions in my country. No, you don't say that. It's 1 million. But what do you notice about this? A lot of students forget that people is plural. It's an irregular plural. So there's no S on it, but it is plural because what's the singular of people? Person. One person, 2 people. So the S is on the noun, not the number. That's why we say, I made $3 billion last year. Cha-ching. So here, you put it on the noun, dollars. Or you could say, I made 3 million posters. That's a lot of posters. So you put the S on the noun. You don't put an S on here. 300, 3,000, 3 million, 3 billion, singular, posters, plural. Statistics Canada reported that 96% of that increase was due to international migration. So notice how here they put in brackets permanent and temporary. It would have been useful if they put that at the very top when we were talking about migration, so you knew. But if you understand the word migration, you know that it means both permanent and temporary, because remember, that's how I explain the difference to you. So just moving. So I'll add that, moving permanently or temporarily for migration. And immigration, it implies permanent. You want to stay in that country permanently. Let's get back to it. In 2022, Canada welcomed 437,000. Okay, 437. When I see 3 zeros, I know that the number before is 1,000. 437. You don't have to say 437. It's not necessary. 437,180. And remember, the S goes on the noun, immigrants, into the country, reflecting Canada's high immigration targets. Now, because this is a target, remember, when you're talking about reaching or achieving that, you can use the verb hit. We hit our target. We hit our target, which means you reached or achieved that target. Immigration is one of the main way. Immigration is one of the main way the country. Does that sound weird to you? Immigration is one of the main way the country deals. Something's wrong with this. There's a typo or a minor grammar mistake because this has to say way. It's not optional. Right now, this article has a typo, which means there's a grammar mistake in the article. It has to be ways. Okay. Now, this sometimes confuses students because you have one of. When you have one of, it means you're selecting one from a group. So the noun that comes next has to be plural because one of. Okay. Here's an easy example. One of. So my noun has to be plural. Flavors. One of my favorite flavors of ice cream is, we use is because is matches one. One is. And then you provide one option. So I wouldn't list 2 or 3 flavors. I only list one. Mint chocolate chip. What is one of your favorite flavors of ice cream? So this implies I have other favorite flavors and I'm just sharing one. So share that in the comments. What is one of your favorite flavors of ice cream? And practice this and make sure you get that S. And I'll cross this out so you know it was a mistake. Immigration is one of the main ways the country deals with its demographic challenges. Canada has an aging population. Remember, I shared that. The baby boomers, they're all becoming 60, 70, they're exiting the workforce, they're aging, becoming older. So that's aging, becoming older. Now, technically, we're all aging. We're all becoming older. Canada has an aging population, and the natural birth rate is not high enough to grow the population itself. By having natural birth rate, they mean the birth rate of Canadians, of people in Canada. And they included that because it relates to the next sentence. As a result, Canada needs immigrants. We need people from other countries, maybe you, to come to Canada permanently. to help maintain and grow the country's workforce. Because remember, I said the baby boomers are exiting the workforce because they're all 60, 70 years old. They're ready to retire. So again, if you haven't shared in the comments, I would be very interested to know if this is a situation that your country is dealing with as well. Immigration accounts for almost 100% of Canada's labor force growth. Wow. 100%, almost. That's quite a staggering statistic. According to Immigration, Refugees, and Citizenship Canada, this is just the name of a government department. By 2023, immigrants are projected to be about 30% of Canada's population. So projected, this means calculated based on information already known. So you could say estimated, but when you say estimated, it sounds more of a guess, because when you estimate something, you don't actually have the information. But when you project something, it's more based on looking at the information and then making a prediction based on that information. So it sounds more accurate to me than estimated. Immigrants are projected to be about 30% of Canada's population. Now, one other thing I noticed about the article is that they said by 2023. This seems odd to me. Does it seem odd to you, or do you know why it seems odd to me? This is a new article. This article is from June 2023. But if you say by 2023, you're saying 2023 is the deadline. But 2023 starts January 1st. And we are in June, which is already several months. But they're saying it is projected to happen by a deadline that's technically in the past. So that to me doesn't make sense. I wonder if 2023 is a typo and maybe they meant to say 2025 or a date in the future, because we can't use by with a timeline in the past. And when this article was written in June 2023, this was already in the past. Another way to correct this mistake is to say by the end of 2023, because now the deadline is December 2023, which is in the future. But by 2023 means January 2023, which is currently in the past. And it does not make sense to me to say by and a past date if you're talking about a future projection. Again, the final way is you could say by 2025 and have a date in the future. So that's how I would correct this as well. And that's the end of the article. And what I'll do now is I'll go to the top and I'll read the article from start to finish. And this time you can focus on my pronunciation. Canada's population surpasses 40 million. Statistics Canada has a population clock, which estimates Canada's population in real time based on a number of factors like recent trends for births, deaths, and immigration data. The clock hit 40 million just before 3 p.m. on Friday, June 16th. This is an exciting milestone for Canada. It is a strong signal that Canada remains a dynamic and welcoming country, full of potential, said Chief Statistician Anil Arora in a media statement. Canada's population growth rate currently stands at 2.7%, which is the highest annual growth rate since 1957, when Canada was experiencing its post-war baby boom. Canada's population reached 30 million in 1997 and could reach 50 million as early as 2043 if the current trends continue, according to Statistics Canada. Last year, Canada's population increased by a record of 1.05 million people. Statistics Canada reported that 96% of that increase was due to international, permanent, and temporary migration. In 2022, Canada welcomed 437,180 immigrants into the country, reflecting Canada's high immigration targets. Immigration is one of the main ways the country deals with its demographic challenges. Canada has an aging population, and the natural birth rate is not high enough to grow the population itself. As a result, Canada needs immigrants to help maintain and grow the country's workforce. Immigration accounts for almost 100% of Canada's labor force growth, according to Immigration, Refugees, and Citizenship Canada. By 2023, immigrants are projected to be about 30% of Canada's population.
Amazing job with that article. Now feel free to hit pause, take a break, go get a cup of coffee or tea, review the vocabulary you just learned, and when you're ready, hit play and we'll continue on with the next article.
Can you guess where this is? Which country this might be? Well, this is India, and it looks pretty crowded, doesn't it? And that's what we're talking about in this article, because China is now the most populous country in the world, and we know that because of our headline. Let me read the headline. India overtakes China as most populous country. First, let's talk about our verb here, overtake. Let me share the definition. This verb simply means to go past something, past in the sense of exceed. And you do that by being a greater amount, so quantity, or degree. We use this a lot with statistics or reporting on numbers, facts, figures. You'll hear this a lot about sales. For example, US sales have overtaken European sales. So sales in the US compared to sales in Europe. Now, I could also use our sentence structure here. Notice the preposition as. I could say the US has overtaken Europe as the leader in sales. So this is the title that has been achieved, the leader in sales, and the title goes to the US. And it also suggests that previously Europe was the leader, but now if you're imagining they're in a competition or a race, Europe was ahead, but now the US has overtaken Europe. So it does suggest that element of competition between the two as well, because previously, before this, China was the most populous and India was a close second, but now India has overtaken. So that's the go past part, which is an important part of this definition. So I'll just underline that. Let's continue on. India has overtaken China as the world's most populous nation, according to Bloomberg, referring to the World Population Review. All right, so we've already discussed overtaken, and I did use the same verb tense, have overtaken, because it was plural, they have. Notice now it's has because it's India, which is conjugated as it, singular, it has. And the reason why this is in the present perfect is because it's a past action. So the action is complete. It's a completed past action, but there's a result in the present. Past action with a result in the present. What's the result in the present? Now, China is the second most populous country and India is the most populous country. That's the result in the present, and that's why the verb tense is in the present perfect. Let's continue on. By the end of 2022, India's population was 1.417 billion people. So if you have numbers after the decimal point, you can simply see them as the individual numbers, 1.417. You don't have to say 1.417. That doesn't sound right. So say the numbers as individual numbers. I'll just write this out for you. Say the numbers as individual numbers after the decimal point, and the decimal point is this. It's the same thing as a period, but when we're referring to numbers specifically, we don't call it a period, we call it a decimal point. And that's why when I say it out loud, I don't say 1.417. You don't say that. You say 1.417. So let me just write that so you understand. You say 1.417. That is how you verbalize this number. 5 million more than China. So we could also say, using our overtake, India has overtaken China by 5 million people. The people is optional because in this context, we know we're talking about population. So you don't have to say people if it's obvious. But if you're ever not sure, just add in the reference point. India has overtaken China by 5 million people. So remember, India has gone past or exceeded China, and then you can have by if you're talking about a specific number. You could also do a percentage. I don't know what the percentage is, so I'll just say 0.7%. You could also have by and then a percent. Remember that point, 7%. Let's continue on. On January 17th, I want you to notice my pronunciation because even though it isn't written as the little th, you know when you see the date and it gives you the little th, 17th. Notice what my mouth is doing. My tongue comes between my teeth and I push out. 17th. That's the pronunciation. Practice that. I know it's a difficult sound for a lot of students, but that is how we say the dates out loud. On January 17th, Chinese authorities announced that for the first time since the 1960s, the country's population will decrease by 850,000. So let's just talk about this number here. We're going to see some big numbers in the billions. Now, when you have 3 zeros, it's 1,000. 3 zeros, that represents 1,000. 850. A lot of native speakers will say 850. You do not need to say and. Sometimes I say it as well, but it is not necessary. It's 850,000. And notice, it's not 850,000s plural. No, 850,000. Okay, singular. In 2022 compared to the previous year. According to the State Statistics Department of China, 1.141 billion people live in the country. Now remember, I said the number is singular, right? The number is singular, but whatever the number represents is plural. Now, people does not have an S because people is the plural form of person is an irregular plural form. So we have one person, two people. So people is the plural. Now, if it were something like dollars, you need to add the S on dollars. 1.141 billion is singular, and then whatever the number represents, in this case, money, dollars, that's where you add the S. But it could be, for example, 1.41 billion t-shirts. Why not? T-shirts. So you put the S on t-shirts. Or it could be 1.141 billion cats, and then you put the S on cats. So that's why billion is singular, but then whatever it represents is plural. Let's continue on. According to World Population Review, as of January 18th, so even though in the spelling it is not there, I'm going to pronounce that TH. As of January 18th, India's population reached 1.423 billion. Another research organization, Macro Trends, claims that India is home to 1.428 billion people. So there's a slight difference in number between these two research organizations, but it's such a small difference, I'm surprised they even mentioned it. It's basically the same number, right? Let's continue on. China and India are the only two countries with populations over 1 billion. 1 billion, singular. Again, if you wanted to, you could add people, which is plural, 1 billion people. Over, another word could be with populations more than, or exceeding would be another word. But we can't use our overtake because remember, overtake is only used when we're talking about competition between two or more, and then one goes past, one exceeds. So I'm specifying this because I did say exceed here, but overtake is specifically if there's some sort of competition. And in this case, there is no competition. They're just stating a fact of the population of specific countries. The U.S. Census Bureau's World Population Clock lists another 12 countries with populations exceeding, so notice here, they use exceeding rather than with populations over or populations more than. They're synonyms. You can choose whichever you'd like. Exceed probably sounds the most formal, I would say. Exceeding 100 million. So let's see, is your country on the list? The U.S., Indonesia, Pakistan, Nigeria, Brazil, Bangladesh, Russia, Mexico, Japan, Ethiopia, the Philippines, and Egypt. My country, Canada, is not on the list. We have a very small population. I actually don't know what the population is, so I'm going to Google it right now. So I just Googled it. Any guesses on the population of Canada? Canada's population is 38.25 million. Very small, right? Considering it's a huge country, but very small population. So what's the population of your country? Feel free to share in the comments below. Let's continue on. Okay, here's where we're getting to some really big numbers. If this intimidates you, don't worry because it intimidates native speakers. I'm sure if you saw a big number in your country, you'd probably stop for a second too. So I will explain how to know what this number is. The projected world population on January 1st. Okay, here we have a difference because With one, you need ST. First, first, st. The difference between the other one is my tongue is not going between my teeth. Notice, first, st, first. January 1st, January 1st, January 5th, January 5th. That's with 5. 5th. Let me write that. January 5th. And then we have January 2nd. And you just add a d sound. And second. And then we have one final choice, which is third. These are pretty easy because you just basically add a D sound on the end. This one, you need that th. And then this one, you need st. So practice those. I will say them one more time for you. January 1st, January 2nd, January 3rd, January 5th. So you can practice that. The projected. When something is projected, it means you're guessing or you're estimating what the number will be based on data or information. So you don't know 100% that this is what the number will be. Is the projected number. So the definition, projected, this is an estimate, and the estimate is calculated based on known information. And notice how specific they are with the projected number. That's pretty specific. So we'll see if that's correct. We actually know what the world population is at the time this video was recorded, so you can go see if this was true or not. Okay, so now I'll read this number. So first of all, what is this? Well, I know by how many groups of 3 there are, okay? So if there are 1, 2, 3 groups of 3, then I know this is billion. And then this is million. Okay. Billion, million. And then this is thousand. And I'm just going to focus on one group. That's how you make this long number very easy to read or understand. You just look at the individual groupings. So 7,942,645,086. And the final group, you don't say anything after it. It's just 86. Remember, I said we don't need to say and. So I don't say 942 million. It's just 942,645,086. So you can practice, write out some random long numbers and practice reading them out loud. That will be helpful. Now let's take a look at our next big number. So I can tell I have 3 groups. So I know I have million and then thousand. And then remember, the final one is nothing. 73,772,634. So that's the amount of the increase. And remember, that's the world population, but this is just projected, which it means it's an estimate. And as a percentage, that's 0.94%. And this is calculated from New Year's Day 2022. During January 2023, 4.3 births and 2.0 deaths are expected worldwide every second. So here's another example where the whatever you're calculating is plural. So we have births. That's why it has an S, because there's more than one, right? And deaths. If it was just one, we wouldn't have the plural. And you would say one death. One death. There was one death this month, for example. There were 2 deaths, add that S, this month. So practice the numbers and the plurals. I hear lots of mistakes from students with both of those. And they're expected. You could also use projected because it's just an estimate based on known information. So you could say that as well. Worldwide, every second. Ooh, every second. So that's our article. You learned a lot of big numbers, a lot of data and statistics. I hope you found it interesting. Now what I'll do is I'll read the article from start to finish, and you can follow along with my pronunciation. India overtakes China as most populous country. India has overtaken China as the world's most populous nation, according to Bloomberg, referring to the World Population Review. By the end of 2022, India's population was 1.417 billion people, 5 million more than China. On January 17th, Chinese authorities announced that for the first time since the 1960s, the country's population will decrease by 850,000 in 2022 compared to the previous year. According to the State Statistics Department of China, 1.141 billion people live in the country. According to World Population Review, as of January 18th, India's population reached 1.423 billion. Another research organization, Macro Trends, claims that India is home to 1.428 billion people. China and India are the only 2 countries with populations over 1 billion. The U.S. Census Bureau's World Population Clock lists another 12 countries with populations exceeding 100 million: the US, Indonesia, Pakistan, Nigeria, Brazil, Bangladesh, Russia, Mexico, Japan, Ethiopia, the Philippines, and Egypt. The projected world population on January 1st, 2023 is 7,942,647,086. An increase of 73,772,634, or 0.94%, from New Year's Day 2022. During January 2023, 4.3 births and 2.0 deaths are expected worldwide every second.
Amazing job with that article. Now, feel free to hit pause, take a break, go get a cup of coffee or tea, review the vocabulary you just learned, and when you're ready, hit play, and we'll continue on with the next article.
Let me read the headline. Canada, U.S. sign deal to better coordinate fight against wildfires. Wildfires. Let's take a look here at this preposition, against. Just take note that you fight against something. In this case, wildfires is a noun. You can also have a verb after against. And because against is a preposition, that verb would be in the gerund form, the ing form. For example, fight against paying taxes. Let's say you want to fight against paying taxes, not again, against paying taxes. So here you have the ing, the gerund verb. Let's continue. Natural Resources Minister Jonathan Wilkinson and David Cohen, the U.S. ambassador to Canada, signed a memorandum of understanding. A memorandum of understanding. As you can see, this is a very long word. we often use an acronym, MOU, an MOU. So you'll see this a lot in news articles, but especially in business related news, even on a website. An MOU. We have an MOU. A memorandum of understanding, an MOU, is simply an arrangement or a deal between two parties to do something specific. Signed a memorandum of understanding, so they agreed to the terms of this arrangement Thursday, and this is the terms of the arrangement: to improve cross-border cooperation on wildfires. The cross-border represents that Canada and the US are divided by a border. So the cross-border is offering support. So Canada will offer support to the US and the US will offer support to Canada. That's the cross-border. So let me write that for you. Cross-border, this represents the fact that Canada and the US share a border. Cooperation on wildfires. While the two countries have worked together on an ad hoc basis for decades. First of all, you should always be looking at your time references in a sentence to understand what verb tense you need. So here we have 4 decades. What verb tense is needed? This should be easy because the verb tense is right there. The present perfect. The present perfect because Canada and the US started working together in the past and they still work together now. So the present perfect for an action that started in the past and continues until now. Present perfect. And we know that we need the present perfect because of our keyword for decades. So this is our keyword for the present perfect. Keyword. So we can say time reference. Now, if this were something different, such as last year, what would my verb tense be? Last year is a completed past action, so I would change this to the past simple. For example, the two countries worked together last year. Or if my keyword was next year, what would you say now? The two countries will work together next year. So always look at your time reference to determine your verb tense and ask yourself if you have the correct verb tense. Let's continue. First, before we continue, let's take a look at ad hoc basis. What does ad hoc basis mean? First of all, the expression is all of this, on an ad hoc basis. This means as it happens. So there is no agreement previously determined. They decide how to work together as it happens. I'll give you an example. Let me just write this: as it happens. For example, you could say, I decide where to travel to on an ad hoc basis. Remember, on an ad hoc basis, all of that together. I decide where to travel to on an ad hoc basis, which means when I need to travel, let's say once every 3 months, I just decide at that moment as it happens. I don't decide in advance. Or you could say, we solve problems on an ad hoc basis, which means as the problem happens, you decide how you're going to solve it. You don't necessarily have a process that you decided on in advance to solve that problem. So that is how the two countries worked in the past and continue to work now because of our present perfect. But it sounds like this memorandum of understanding will specify how the countries will work together, which means they will no longer be working on an ad hoc basis because the memorandum of understanding will tell them how they will work together. While the two countries have worked together on an ad hoc basis for decades, the New Deal, which is the Memorandum of Understanding, the MOU, let me write that, the MOU, formalizes that cooperation and makes it easier for U.S. firefighters to pitch in when Canada needs them to quell a fire. To quell a fire simply means to stop a fire as is happening. So right now they're trying to quell the fire. It's a very specific term. You won't need that in your everyday speech, but based on the context, it should be obvious because what do you do with a fire? You stop it. Let's take a look at pitch in. U.S. firefighters to pitch in. When you pitch in, it means you contribute. You can contribute your time, your resources. You could also contribute your money. For example, everyone pitched in and bought Fred a present for his retirement. So this suggests that everyone on the team gave money, maybe $5, $10, $20, and then all that money went towards one present. So that is financially. You can also pitch in terms of your time. Everyone pitched in, and let me write a new example here. Everyone pitched in and cleaned the apartment. So here, it's not necessarily that people gave money, but they gave their time, they gave their effort, they gave their hard work. Everyone pitched in and cleaned the apartment. So everyone contributed towards a specific objective. So in this case, the specific objective is clean the apartment. In this case, it's to buy a present. So pitch in is to contribute to something specific, and it can be money, it can be time, it can be other resources as well. So in this case, it will make it easier for U.S. firefighters to pitch in. So maybe they will give money, but most likely they'll give their skills. They'll give themselves to help stop the fires. And vice versa. Vice versa is when you want to say the opposite is true. So U.S. firefighters pitch in when Canada needs them, but also Canada pitches in when the U.S. needs support. So vice versa. I'll help you and you'll help me. Vice versa. So here, the opposite is also true. Vice versa. Now, I summarize all of these notes in a free lesson PDF, so you can look in the description to download the free PDF. Let's continue. As part of the deal, the MOU, there's now a new framework that stipulates how firefighting resources will be exchanged between the two countries. Stipulates, this is another word for outline or determine. So the framework determines how the resources will be exchanged. It outlines, it stipulates. Basically, it says, outlines, determines how the resources will be exchanged. So how Canada will pitch in when the U.S. needs support and vice versa. All right, let's continue. The deal is designed to cut through the red tape. Oh, what is red tape? You are very familiar with red tape. Red tape represents official rules or processes, but that seem unnecessary. So when you have to do something simple like change your address and you have to fill out 7 different forms and mail them to 7 different people, doesn't that seem a little unnecessary? So you can say, oh, there's so much red tape. We usually use this when dealing with the government, but you can also use this for a large organization or any organization, but generally large organizations like Google, IBM, they will have a lot of red tape as well because they are so large. They have so many different processes that you need to follow, but many of them might seem unnecessary. So let me write that for you. And to cut through the red tape means to try to reduce it. So this deal is to try to make these processes work better, more efficient, more effective, and bring together the agencies on both sides of the border. Remember that other expression was cross-border. So you could use that as an adjective and say, and bring together the cross-border agencies. The cross-border agencies. Now, of course, in Canada's case, it's Canada and the US. But US also shares a border with Mexico. So it could be the US and Mexico, could be cross-border. So whatever country that you border with would be the cross-border agency or country that have had a hand in fighting these destructive fires. To have a hand in something or doing something is an idiom, and it means simply to be involved with something or have influence on something. And notice, in is a preposition, so the verb will be a gerund verb, ing. But you can also use a noun. So you might say, who had a hand in the party? In Fred's retirement party. Remember Fred? We all pitched in to buy him a present. Who had a hand in the party? Who had? Because remember, to have, our verb is have. So this is have in the past simple. Who had a hand in the party, in Fred's party? And then I could say, oh, I had a hand in planning Fred's party. So this simply means you're involved in it or you influence it in some way. So maybe you were responsible for deciding what present to buy Fred. So you had a hand in the party. Let's continue. The deal also calls for better information sharing so that both countries can stop a fire, quell a fire, before it spirals out of control. When something spirals out of control, it simply loses control quickly. And it implies that it's difficult to bring it back under control. So to lose control quickly. Lose control quickly. You can use this in workplace situations because let's say you're having a meeting and you're negotiating something during this meeting. You could say our negotiations spiraled out of control, which means you lost control of the negotiations. So maybe you wanted to offer a certain amount and then now everyone is talking about an amount that is a lot higher than you wanted to offer. So your control over that negotiation, over the amount that you wanted to pay, you lost control over that and you lost control quickly. So it spiraled out of control. For example, our negotiations spiraled out of control. Are you enjoying this lesson? If so, I want to tell you about the Finally Fluent Academy. This is my premium training program where we study native English speakers on TV, movies, YouTube, and the news so you can improve your listening skills of fast English, add all these natural and advanced expressions to your speech, and learn how to communicate your ideas fluently and naturally. Plus, you'll have me as your personal coach. You can look in the description for a link on how to join. Now let's continue with our lesson. For example, Canada will now have easy access to sophisticated US satellite data that can identify fires. The deal comes as Canada grapples with a record-breaking wildfire season. To grapple with is another way of saying to deal with. And we use this with something negative. You grapple with a problem, an issue to grapple with. So you might say, we're grappling with the negotiations. We're dealing with the negotiations. And because I already explained that the negotiations have spiraled out of control, you know that there's something negative there. We're grappling with the negotiations. The US has already deployed more than 1,500 firefighters. Deploy is a verb to mean when you move either people or resources from one location to another in order to support that other location. So here you can deploy the firefighters because they're people. You can also deploy resources, deploy support, deploy food, deploy aid. So to deploy, you move from one place to another. It can be within a country as well. So Texas deployed resources to California, for example, but we commonly see this when one country deploys it to another. The US has already deployed more than 1,500 firefighters to Canada to help local authorities. Canada has received support from other countries like Australia, Chile, and South Africa. Thank you to those countries. We appreciate the support. Here, Canada's receiving the support, but you could say Australia deployed support to Canada. Chile deployed support to Canada. Just like here, the US deployed these resources, the firefighters, to Canada. Canadian firefighters have helped out the neighbors in years past. The neighbors being the US. They're our neighbors to the south, and we're their neighbors to the north. Here, help out. This is an optional phrasal verb. Notice here it's a phrasal verb because you have the verb help and you have the preposition out. You don't need out. It's optional. You can simply say Canadian firefighters have helped the neighbors in years past. Have helped. It's simply optional. Can you help me out? Can you help me? There's no difference there. Can you help me out? Can you help me? But if you do use the phrasal verb, make sure you know the correct placement because you can't say, can you help out me? Can you help out me? That's incorrect because the pronoun needs to come between help and out. Can you help me out? Can you help me? So if you're not too sure about sentence structure, just use the verb form so you don't make any grammatical mistakes. In 2020, for example, Canadian firefighters were deployed to the northwestern US. So remember, Canada sends the firefighters and the US receives the firefighters because we use the verb deploy. During a particularly ugly wildfire season. This is the kind of thing that Canada and the US can do together. We will always have your back, Cohen said. And remember, Cohen is the ambassador to Canada. So he is an American. the ambassador, the US ambassador to Canada. So Cohen is saying we, the United States, will always have your Canada's back. So let me write that because I want to explain this expression, to have one's back. So the US will always have Canada's back. So the expression is to have one's back. And that's why I changed it to the US and Canada, because I wanted you to see this possessive. To have one's back. It's possessive. This is the expression, to have one's back. And this simply is used to say to support. So if I say, I have your back, I have your back, I'm saying I am there to support you in whatever way you need that support. Don't worry, I have your back. I have your back. So that's a very nice thing for the US to say. We will always, I like this, always have your back. So thank you to the US for having our back. So you could say that. Thank you for, so let's say someone says, don't worry, I have your back. You can say, thank you for having my back. Or in this case, because it was we and your, I could say, thank you for having our back. And our representing all of Canada. So our, my, back. Thank you for is a gerund expression because for is a preposition, so you need the ing. Thank you for having my back. Don't worry, I always have your back when it comes to improving your English. So you can say, thank you, Jennifer, for having my back, my back. And then you could say, thank you for having my back when it comes to teaching me English. Because remember, it's support, but you can offer it for something specific. When it comes to teaching me English. So you can put that in the comments if you want to thank me for always having your back. And that is the end of our article. So what I'll do now is I will read the article from start to finish, and this time you can focus on my pronunciation. So I'll do that now. Canada, US sign deal to better coordinate fight against wildfires. Natural Resources Minister Jonathan Wilkinson and David Cohen, the U.S. ambassador to Canada, signed a memorandum of understanding Thursday to improve cross-border cooperation on wildfires. While the two countries have worked together on an ad hoc basis for decades, the new deal formalizes that cooperation and makes it easier for U.S. firefighters to pitch in when Canada needs them to quell a fire, and vice versa. As part of the deal, there's now a new framework that stipulates how firefighting resources will be exchanged between the two countries. The deal is designed to cut through red tape and bring together the agencies on both sides of the border that have a hand in fighting these destructive fires. The deal also calls for better information sharing so that both countries can stop a fire before it spirals out of control. For example, Canada will now have easy access to sophisticated U.S. satellite data that can identify fires. The deal comes as Canada grapples with a record-breaking wildfire season. The U.S. has already deployed more than 1,500 firefighters to Canada to help local authorities. Canada has received support from other countries like Australia, Chile, and South Africa. Canadian firefighters have helped out the neighbors in past years. In 2020, for example, Canadian firefighters were deployed to the northwestern U.S. during a particularly ugly wildfire season. This is the kind of thing that Canada and the U.S. can do together. We will always have your back, Cohen said.
Amazing job with that article. Now feel free to hit pause, take a break, go get a cup of coffee or tea, review the vocabulary you just learned, and when you're ready, hit play and we'll continue on with the next article.
US President Joe Biden touches down in Ottawa. First, let's talk about this phrasal verb, touch down. And notice we have an S on it because it's conjugated with Joe Biden, which represents the subject he. US President Joe Biden, he touches down in Ottawa. Now, to touch down, this means to land, and we use it specifically for a plane. As an example, I could say, my plane just touched down, which means my plane just landed. To be honest, I would say that landed is more common than using the phrasal verb touch down. So if you're already comfortable with using what time does your plane land, my plane just landed, I say keep using it, but at least now you know what it means when you see it. Okay, let's continue on and talk about his trip in Canada. US President Joe Biden arrived Thursday evening in Ottawa for a whirlwind 27-hour visit. Now, first, I want to point out that for everyone who doesn't know, the capital city of Canada is Ottawa. It is not Toronto. I think probably 90% of people think the capital city in Canada is Toronto. That's just not true. Ottawa is the capital city, which is where all the official government business takes place, and which is why President Joe Biden is visiting Ottawa and not Toronto. Toronto is Canada's largest city. Okay, so make sure you know that the next time someone asks you about the capital of Canada. Arrived Thursday evening in Ottawa for a whirlwind 27-hour visit. Okay, what is a whirlwind? Whirlwind. Pronunciation. Whirlwind. A whirlwind. Now, this is being used as an adjective. And we often describe an event like a visit, a meeting, a vacation, a conference as a whirlwind vacation, a whirlwind conference, a whirlwind meeting. A whirlwind visit is simply a visit where many, many things happen in a short period of time. So very active, many different activities. So he's going to go to a lot of different places, meet a lot of different people as well. And that's why you could describe your vacation or a meeting or a conference or even your summer. I had a whirlwind summer. It implies that you did many, many different things. You saw many, many different people. So I would say busy, eventful, see lots of people, things. That's how I would describe it. And this is an adjective. So it's an adjective. So as an adjective, you would put it before what you're describing. Expected to focus on both the friendly and thorny aspects of the Canada-US relationship. Okay, so friendly, you know what that means. What about thorny? Well, thorn is something very sharp, and a thorn hurts you. So that's kind of what you want to imagine. Those aspects of the relationship that are thorny, that can hurt you. So in this case, I would just say the positive aspects of the relationship, that's the friendly aspects, and then the thorny are the negative aspects of the relationship. Because obviously these two countries probably don't share the same opinion on every single topic. They probably have some debate that they're going to have as well. So that would be, I would just summarize it as negative. So you could describe your relationship. I have a thorny relationship with my boss, with my coworker. So you're saying, you know, it's negative. There are things that hurt each other in that relationship. Okay, thorny aspects of the Canada-US relationship. I don't know what those aspects are. I guess right here, including protectionism and migration on both sides of the border. So I'm not sure if these are the friendly aspects or the thorny aspects. They don't really specify. Now, actually, before we move on, I want to talk about the pronunciation of Canada because I actually hear a lot of mispronunciation because of syllable stress. So a lot of students will put the stress on the wrong syllable or they won't put any stress on it. So it's Canada. It's not Canada. Canada. Sometimes I hear that where the da is really strong. Canada. No. Canada, Canada, okay? That's how you say it, like an American, like a Canadian. Canada. So this da is quite short. Canada, Canada. So now you know the capital of Canada, the largest city, and you know how to correctly pronounce it. All of these notes are available in a lesson PDF, so you can look in the description or the comment section to download the free lesson PDF. All right, let's continue on. It's quite a packed schedule. So a packed schedule, this is just another way of saying busy, busy. Now, you could also think of it as crowded because you can say the event was packed. And in this case, packed means crowded. So there were many, many people in the event. So you couldn't really move around. It was crowded. But because we're talking about a schedule, it really more means busy. Now, honestly, you could use our same adjective as before and probably say it's quite a whirlwind schedule, because what is a busy schedule? It's when you do lots of things, see lots of people, meet with lots of people. Well, that's also kind of the definition of busy, right? So you could use our other adjective, whirlwind, or you can use packed as well. And then know that packed can mean crowded at the same time. So in terms of busy, you could say, my weekend was packed. My weekend was packed, which means it was busy. Now, sometimes we actually add, which is kind of fun. I like saying this. We add the word action in front. Oh, my weekend was action packed. You don't have to say that. You can simply say packed, but that's just an option. Action packed or packed. All right. It was quite a packed schedule for a short trip, said White House National Security Council spokesman, that's a long title, John Kirby on Wednesday. This is a meaningful visit. Canada is one of the United States' closest allies. Notice they have this apostrophe. This is to show possession. The United States' closest allies and friends. So the allies belongs to the United States. The friends belong to the United States. So that's why. Now, generally with possession, I would say, that's my friend's shirt. So that is when I'm talking about my one friend, right? So my one friend, singular. Now, this S is not plural. It's to show possession. It's to show the shirt belongs to my friend. Okay? Now, I could say, that's my friends. Because I can say my friends and it could be plural. That's my friends. What could be a multiple item belonging to my friends? That's my friend's dog. Okay, let's say I have two friends and they live in the same house and they share one dog. So the dog belongs to my friends, two friends, plural. But I just put the apostrophe here because there is already an S. So I don't need to put another S because that looks weird, right? So you don't need to put another S if it ends in an S. And this is to show possession. This is also to show possession. Okay. Canada is one of the United States' closest friends and allies and friends, and has been now for more than 150 years. Why is it 150 years? Because that's how long Canada has been a country. It's been 152 or 3 years. That's why they say more than. So since we became a country. This will be the first true in-person bilateral meeting. A bilateral meeting is a meeting between two people. So it's just another way of saying two people. I don't know why they really said it, because it's already implied, because it's Joe Biden and Trudeau and they're two people. Anyway, you could say, I'm having a bilateral meeting with my boss. And this implies that the meeting is between you and your boss, because bilateral is with two people. Now, let's say it's actually my boss's friend. I can't think of anything else, so I'll say friend. But notice this is possessive because the friend belongs to my boss. Boss already ends in S, so I don't need to put another S there. If it were the other way around, my friend's boss, I put apostrophe S because it does not end in S. And this is also showing possession. I have a bilateral meeting with my friend's boss. Okay, let me highlight that for you. Between the two leaders in Canada since 2009. So it will be the first true in-person bilateral meeting. Now, adding in person, because obviously in the last few years, a lot of meetings have taken place online. So it suggests that it's possible they had an online bilateral meeting. It's possible. Now, notice we have since plus a specific time. Since 2009. Since last summer, since March 5th. And we use for with a time period. For 2 weeks, 2 years. Now, in this context, for doesn't work. You wouldn't replace. It will be the first in-person meeting for 2 weeks. It doesn't make any sense. So we can't replace it with for, but I'm just letting you know that there are specific times when you use since or for in other cases, because I do see mistakes with those. In this case, we need to use since, and we have to have a specific time because since is only used with a specific time. Okay. The first year of Biden's term, so here's another possessive, the term belongs to Biden. The first year of Biden's term focused on rebuilding Canada-US relations following Trump's divisive term in office. All right, let's take a look at this. Focused on rebuilding. So notice a couple things. One, it's in the gerund form. My verb is in the ing gerund form. Why? Because I have a preposition here. On is a preposition. And when we have a preposition, your following verb, in this case, rebuilding, needs to be in the ing, in the gerund form. So that's our gerund. So I'll just write that out for you. Preposition plus gerund. Now, we have a re in front of building to say is happening again. So we're building it again. You might say, Jennifer, this lesson was awesome, but I need to re-watch it. I need to watch it again. Why? Well, because you need to practice everything I'm teaching you in this lesson, right? I need to rewatch this lesson at least 3 times to really fully learn everything I'm teaching you in this lesson, because I'm going quite fast, aren't I? So this means watch again. And notice for pronunciation, e. I'm not doing like a schwa sound, watch. American pronunciation, we love our unstressed schwa sound in our throat here, but I'm not doing that. This is a full e, rewatch. Watch it again. So hopefully you rewatch this lesson. Let me know if you're going to rewatch it. Okay, let's talk about this. Divisive. Trump's divisive term in office. Divisive comes from the word division, which also comes from the word divided. When people are divided, when there's division between a group of people, it means some people think this and other people think that. And divisive is the adjective that's describing that. As an example, I could say his policy is very divisive. It causes some people to be here and other people to be here. It causes division. It divides people. So it's implying that Trump caused division between the United States and Canada, or at least their relationship. Let's continue on. The second focused on meeting obligations. The second, remember here we are talking about the first year of Biden's term. Now we're talking about the second year of Biden's term. The second focused on meeting obligations. So again, on is our preposition. So we have our gerund here. Meeting obligations, including prioritizing orderly and safe migration through regular pathways, Kirby said. Now, heading into the third year of his term, we use the word head as a replacement to the word go. So you could say going into the third term. Going, or I guess in this case, you might want to think of it as entering, but go, there's movement, right? And enter, there's movement as well. I'm going into the store. I'm entering the store. Now, we do use head a lot. You could say, I'm heading to the store. When do you head to the airport? And in this case, it means go. I'm going to the store. When do you go to the airport? It's extremely common. It sounds very natural. Americans, we love saying head as a replacement for go. So you can start with these two expressions and then add on some more to your vocabulary once you get comfortable with them. Now, heading into the third, this visit is about taking stock of what we've done, where we are, what we need to prioritize for the future. Okay, when you take stock of something, you basically assess the current situation. So you might say, we need to take stock of our finances. So you need to think about your current financial situation and then perhaps the recent past of it and then going into the near future as well. So the current situation, including the past and the present. So let me just write that out for you. Let's take stock, or we need to take stock of our financial situation. As I said, I think the best replacement would be assess. When you assess something, you think about the current situation. So assess, think about the current situation. And in this case, it's the current situation of your financial situation. A little bit confusing there using situation twice. So this visit is about taking stock of what we've done. So assessing what we've done, where we are, and what we need to prioritize for the future. So far, neither the White House nor the Prime Minister's office have confirmed if there will be any impromptu stops during the trip. All right, let's take a look at neither nor. I did create a separate video on neither nor because I hear a lot of mistakes with it. So I'll put the link to that video in the comment, but just know that neither is used when it's negative. So it's saying not the White House and not the Prime Minister. So it's negative for the White House and it's also negative for the Prime Minister. That's what I'll say now, just because I do already have that full lesson on it. So I will just say link to lesson in the video description on neither nor. It's a great video, and I highly suggest you watch it. Okay, so you can watch that when you have time. It's a pretty short video as well. Just trying to get this. Let me just put this on a separate line for you. Neither, whoopsie. Neither nor. Oh, okay, got it. Whew. So far, neither the White House nor the Prime Minister's office have confirmed if there will be any impromptu stops. Well, what's an impromptu stop? It's an unplanned stop, unplanned. It seems like it would be obvious that there would be unplanned stops. For example, if you and I were going on a vacation, we wouldn't plan out every single place, including cafes, restaurants, stores, in advance and have that on an itinerary, right? If we felt like going to a cafe, we would go to a cafe. Obviously, that's not how it works for the president for security reasons. Everything has to be very planned out so security can be present. So that's why an impromptu stop is unlikely. But it did happen when Barack Obama, former president Barack Obama, visited Ottawa many years ago. And that's what this picture represents. I'll continue reading this. So it hasn't been confirmed if there will be any unplanned impromptu stops during the trip, meaning we'll have to wait and see whether there will be another Obama cookie moment. If you come to Ottawa as a tourist, you will see this Obama cookie. It's very popular for tourists, and it's because Obama visited Canada in Ottawa, where I live, the capital, remember? In 2009, and he had an impromptu stop, an unplanned stop. So he went to our tourist area, which is called the Byward Market. That's just an area of the city in our historic downtown where the tourists generally go. And he went to a bakery and he bought a cookie from that bakery. Remember, this happened in 2009. Today, if you go into that bakery, there are pictures of Obama everywhere. Like this picture is from the bakery. And this is a television. What I'm pointing at with my mouse is a television, and it plays over and over again Barack Obama's trip in Canada from 2009. It's pretty funny because even now it's a big tourist attraction in Ottawa to come see this Obama cookie. So if Biden makes an impromptu stop, maybe we'll have a Biden cookie in Ottawa as well, or something like that. Okay, we'll have to wait and see if there'll be another Obama cookie moment when then US President Barack Obama popped into a bakery in the Byward Market during his 2009 trip. I like this phrasal verb to pop into. When you pop into a store, a cafe, a bakery in Obama's case, it means you just enter quickly. So you just go in, you get your cookie, and you leave. So most likely you're not going to stay for 2 hours and have lunch with a friend. You're just going to get something and leave. So if you're with your husband or wife or a friend, you might say, is it okay if we pop into this store? I need to buy, and then you can just tell whatever you want to buy, okay? Now, when you say pop into, your friend, your husband, your wife, they understand that is going to be quick. So even if you're on a schedule, they know, okay, it's not going to take a long time. So if someone asks you like, oh, did you visit the museum when you were in Ottawa? You might say, we popped in, which means you didn't spend a very long time. So this is the same as saying visited quickly. We popped in. We just took a few pictures, looked around, but we had another appointment to get to. We just popped in. So we use this a lot when you're going to stores, or you might go pop into a friend's house, which means you visit that friend for a brief period of time. So my friend popped in on over the weekend, just sometime over the weekend. Oh, my friend popped in over the weekend. So she visited me quickly. That's what it implies. And that's the end of the article. So now I'll read the article from start to finish so you can focus on my pronunciation. U.S. President Joe Biden touches down in Ottawa. U.S. President Joe Biden arrived Thursday evening in Ottawa for a whirlwind 27-hour visit expected to focus on both the friendly and thorny aspects of the Canada-U.S. relationship, including protectionism and migration on both sides of the border. It's quite a packed schedule for a short trip, said White House National Security Council spokesman John Kirby on Wednesday. This is a meaningful visit. Canada is one of the United States' closest allies and friends, and has been now for more than 150 years. This will be the first true in-person bilateral meeting between the two leaders in Canada since 2009. The first year of Biden's term focused on rebuilding Canada-U.S. relations following Trump's divisive term in office. The second focused on meeting obligations, including prioritizing orderly and safe migration through regular pathways, Kirby said. Now heading into the third, this visit is about taking stock of what we've done, where we are, and what we need to prioritize for the future. So far, neither the White House nor the Prime Minister's office have confirmed if there will be any impromptu stops during the trip, meaning we'll have to wait and see whether there will be another Obama cookie moment when the U.S. President Barack Obama popped into a bakery in the Byward Market during his 2009 trip.
Amazing job with this lesson. Now, what was your favorite new word from this lesson? Leave that in the comments below and leave an example sentence practicing your new vocabulary. And if you found this lesson helpful, please hit the like button, share it with your friends, and of course, subscribe. And before you go, make sure you head to my website and get your free speaking guide. In this guide, I share 6 tips on how to speak English fluently and confidently. And until next time, happy studying!